Good afternoon, Absheni, Sanbonani, Lochani. Thank you so much. I heard they were saying JP.
Yes.
I'm also going to say JP. And this is much appreciated, to be given this opportunity. I understand the rector was here earlier, Professor Pretorius. Thank you. I'll acknowledge him. The Justice, Albert Sachs, I think he has already left. Professor Dube, the Executive Management of UWC and heads of departments, UWC Media Society. I thought the chairperson also will be here of the society, JJ Dabane, but I don't think he's here. Fellow panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you, and thanks again to the UWC Media Society for extending this invitation. This dialogue takes place at the time when SANEF, South African National Editors Forum, has taken a decision to establish an inquiry into media ethics, and which will be led by a panel of commissioners and chaired by a retired judge, Sechwell. That also suggests that something is not going right. It suggests that there has been some degree of introspection. I think JP has already indicated. I'll take you through some of the examples. Accordingly, it is my view that conversations such as this are very critical. And if channeled correctly, they can enrich the work of the inquiry, but also as the media society, we can also assist or be helpful in providing fair reporting and factual reporting. After all this, we have universities which are very critical in this intellectual engagement. This is where the solutions of the country should be coming from. So you are very critical as the university where ideas will be shared. I have been asked to speak on this theme. JP has already indicated how the South African media has told my story. And this will be within the broader topic of developing a diverse media space. I shall try and to do that. I started on a Friday, October on the 14th, 2016. As you'd know that I had to undergo a very rigorous process, which was televised, where we had around 87 candidates who were nominated. I never applied for the post, but it was a nomination process where we were then shortlisted to around 14 candidates, and then I was appointed the fourth public protector. And my predecessor, Thuli Madonsela, was then the head of the institution. So one of the first things I noticed when I started at the institution, it was a Friday, was that there are television screens at the head office where I'm based in Pretoria, mounted on the walls. And then on the foyer, you will see there are 24-hour news channels which were reflected or were showing. In fact, actually, it was ENCA. I returned to the office again that weekend as I prepared to commence my duties. In the week, I heard and found out that the same three sets of television from the ground floor, first and second floor, were still fixed on the same channel. This remained the case again on Monday, on which I reported for duty. I then decided to inquire from our communications team. I wanted to know if there was a specific reason for the apparent reliance on that specific channel for the news and information, especially considering diversity of opinions and allowing each and every person to hear different aspects of whatever we are reporting on. Following the discussion with the team, an email was sent to the information technology staff, who were the custodians of the television decoder, which provided the feed to the 3 television sets. In that email, dated October 17, 2016, which I have had to unearth this week as I prepared for this address, because now I'm telling my side of the story. The message was clear. Play SABC News Channel 404 on one floor, play ENCA on the other floor, and play ANN7 on the other floor. I thought that settled the issue. The next thing I knew, screaming headlines were all over the news, with reports suggesting that I had issued an instruction that the television news feed should be switched from ENCA to the Gupta-owned ANN7. For the life of me, I could not and still cannot understand how such an innocent request could be construed as a directive to strong-arm staff into becoming loyal ANN7 viewers. For the record, I had nothing against ENCA. I watched that channel regularly, and my point was that there should be a multiplicity of sources of news and information, since each station has its own editorial policy. I've heard the young men, some of them were saying we are editors. So, you've got different styles, and which informs the content they broadcast. But somehow, someone decided they were going to twist the story for whatever reason, and my integrity is still paying dearly for that deliberate act of distortion. This was not the first instance of throwing the kind of dirt that would stick at me. A month prior to my assumption of duty, the DA, as we all know that they never supported my appointment, called a press conference in Cape Town where I was slandered in the most brutal way, and the former NPA prosecutor and their spokesperson, Advocate Brettenbach, and a colleague, had made defamatory statements about me at that press conference, and they alleged that without evidence that I was on the payroll of State Security Agency, that I'm a spy, and I was appointed purely to perpetuate the capture of my office on behalf of former President Jacob Zuma. As you would know that the former, Advocate Mushwana and Advocate Madonsela was also appointed by former President Jacob Zuma after the parliamentary process. So the same process was followed with me. I then politely asked for a retraction and an apology, but that was not forthcoming. Hence, I ended up suing the DA. To this end, they failed to prove to the court those allegations. In fact, in the Western Cape High Court, we've won the case where they wanted us to produce evidence that I was not the spy, but they are the ones who are supposed to produce that. Anyway, the matter now is on appeal. If this is not demonstrative of the fact that the party does not have shred of evidence, but that we will deal with. Anyhow, that I am a spy and beholden by President Zuma went viral. Again, the media played the role. It did not help that a few months after my appointment, I had a meet and greet with President Zuma, who was welcoming me on my new responsibility since appointment. This innocent meeting, in the eyes of some, confirmation that I was captured by the former president, by the by extension, the Guptas, a picture of me showing or shaking hands with him, also went through heavy circulation. Incidentally, this picture appears to be a favorite for a certain constitutional law professor who is very critical of me, for he tends to use it every other week in his blog where he publishes such criticism. To this day, I still do not get why this is, is wrong to meet the head of state. Advocate Lawrence Mushwana and Advocate Madonsela have done the same thing and have spoken publicly about similar interactions with the former President Nelson Mandela and President Zuma, respectively. At his farewell function in September 2009, Advocate Mushwana referred to a phone call he received from President Mandela, who was no longer in office. Shortly after his appointment, he told guests of how Madiba said to him, I quote, "From today, you are no longer a member of the ANC, you are apolitical, and you must act accordingly. You are a protector of every citizen of this country, irrespective of their political affiliation, race, color, or creed," close quote. Advocate Mushwana, you all know, was an ANC MP prior his appointment, so he was meeting the requirement because also that was one of the requirements which could be recognized. Advocate Madonsela as well related how President Zuma welcomed her into the office. When he was down and out, he had to tend to this very office. I mean, that's what President Zuma was telling my predecessor. And these two examples suggest that this interaction between the presidents and the new appointees of the office is a tradition. But again, how it was portrayed by the media, it was then blown out of proportion. A lot other baseless and distorted content was and continues to be published. Coupled with this was my investigation into the Absa Bancorp matter. It appears the cardinal sin was the fearlessness to dare touch the establishment by directing that 1.125 billion lost for the people of South Africa in an illegal gift from the South African Reserve Bank to this Bancorp Absa be recovered. That case was lost on technicalities. In addition, I considered in hindsight that the remedial action, the way it was crafted, was peremptory, and I agreed that that remedial action be set aside, especially relating to Parliament. The court never dealt with the factual issues of that 1.152 billion lost and thereby prejudicing the people of South Africa. Again, my concern is investigate, issue a report with remedial action. And in all our investigation, we look into what prejudices the complainants or even people of South Africa. We are all about justice and the rule of law. So at the risk of appearing to be ranting now, telling all this and having to appear as if I'm playing the victim, let me reiterate to the organizers of these events that you've asked me to speak about my story. I think I've started doing that. You all know Malcolm X, one of the world symbol of human rights activism, who gained fame for his unrelenting pushback against racial oppression in the US in the 50s and 60s. And he made the profound observation, quote, I quote, you all know the quote, "The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. So whoever control your mind, dictate the terms." So I close the quote. He also said the following quote, "If you are not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppression." I close the quote. So we know, enshrined in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Section 16 of the Constitution is the freedom of expression, which covers freedom of the press and other media. This makes free and independent press the cornerstone of our democracy. I mean, we would want to know factual reporting, also apply our minds and know that this is an information age, we need to know. So the self-regulation regime of the media is born out of this very principle of an independent and free press, because a state-controlled media is constrained from reporting freely and is outright non-palatable. So the decision to safeguard the freedom of the press and insert it in the Bill of Rights, I think it was a masterstroke and a very progressive way to depart from the draconian laws of apartheid. I think you know, there's a story, possibly as media students, you'll know that you remember the Mulder Gate, or the information scandal attributed to Dr. Connie Mulder, who served as a Minister of Information in the President's office, John Foster's government, early 90s, where he launched a propaganda war in the face of the massive bad press against the apartheid government. So this propaganda war included the bribing of international news agencies and secret establishment of a government-controlled newspaper, The Citizen, which was meant to counter the Rand Daily Mail, a paper seen as anti-government. There was a controversial banning of the newspaper, jailing of the journalist. I think I worked as a National Director of Refugees at Home Affairs. I had cases where we had applications for refugee status, because a refugee is somebody who has fled their country because they are being persecuted by their government. So a lot of other African countries, you'd find that journalists are still being persecuted. So in this instance, I will also go into the words of Chief Justice Pius Langa. Justice Albissex mentioned that, I quote, "Without the media, equality and human dignity would diminish in this democratic state. Independence of both the media and the judiciary is very important for our democracy to flourish." So I think, I close quote, that's the criticalness of this media and the media in our society. And again, that guarantees the independence, the free press, and in that instance, we should then shy away from the danger of what Malcolm X told us about. So as part of self-regulation, the media has sought to ensure that the power it wields is exercised responsibly and without abuse. We'll all love that. To fulfill this, the Press Council includes the Press Ombudsman and appeal structures. It was established, and it's good that there's a Press Ombudsman as well. But the Council is made up of constituents associations such as SANEF and the Forum for Community Journalists. It was founded to preserve the right to freedom of the press, which is good, but again, they need to develop ethical practice in journalism. Under the banner of the Press Council, they also quote that as a young democracy, we are guided at all times by public interest, understood to describe information of legitimate interest and importance. So I close quote. I wouldn't quote more of that. But the critical issue is, I wouldn't want to depart a lot on what I'm asked to do. For instance, when you see in the media reportage these days, you see Bosasa, state capture, then you are likely to find as many critical reports about Steinhoff, bread price fixing, and stuff like that. So I think there should be that balanced reporting. PJ spoke about the challenges I've faced, where there was this Financial Mail article, "Enemy of the State," with question mark, lay boldly upon a picture of myself, disfigured and concocted to paint me as a devilish creature. So he has explained. So this type of media coverage is illustrative of the damning complexion and texture of how the South African media has told my story. I have previously told the story of how I have had journalists calling me a moron. I think you'd know that in terms of the Public Protector Act, an insult to the Public Protector or Deputy Public Protector is you'll be in fact it's an offense, and there are cases which have been opened against them. You've seen again, media is all over sending media inquiries about the allegations of my bank details. I think you've seen the article where this organized crime and corruption reporting project that I was flagged by International Banking Institution as having financial links to the Gupta family. The interesting thing is that when the authors of the story requested comment from my office, they said in their own words that there is no indication that the source of the funds were from the Gupta network. And yet they still went ahead to report that I had been flagged as having financial ties to the Guptas. So that's the reporting. Again, those are the headlines. You'll see the headlines. Chief Justice indicated that if as South Africans we can read and be critical in whatever we read. Unfortunately, that's what sells. The headlines, Busi hates Tuli. Then everyone concludes that's that. No, nothing is being read. Or Busi, or the public protector is involved in money laundering. And that's the conclusion. So in March, we were approached by an online publication for comments regarding our SARS investigation. We gave our comments. Hours later, when the article was published, it did not reflect our side of the story. The article contained factual inaccuracies, which we had to sort them to correct. It also falsely carried a line that falsely said our comments remained outstanding at the time of publication. Our request for fair reporting or treatment was met with anger. The editor and the author of the story was surprisingly very rude. Their story remained the same even after their blunder was brought to light. And this was the same publication that refused me a right of reply after one of the contributors labeled me a criminal and a servant of criminals, so among others. So that was reported to the press ombudsman. So in April, information came to my attention that a politician was pushing for my arrest for trumped charges of money laundering and being involved in the passing of my husband. And this came in a form of an inquiry by a Sunday newspaper. So we explained at the outset that what happened to my late husband suffered depression. Depression, we all know, some people do commit suicide. We also denied the allegations of being involved in money laundering. But we're still answering the same questions, and it's still being peddled. The same publication again, publishing that I protected the former State Security Minister Bongo, and the leader of the DA, Chief Whip, was saying they've reported, the public protector is not investigating. And there was proof that they never reported, they only reported to the ethics. We requested retract and apologize. They blatantly refused to do that. So, again, that is what the media will daily try to reflect about this public protector. And there was also in the last month's picture of a politician sitting with some lady, and there were allegations this is the public protector being involved in factional political battles or a fight back campaigns, being accused of that. So, as you would know, the public protector is the only institution in the country which has the mandate to investigate the executive. The politicians who are executive, meaning the president, ministers, premiers, MECs, I don't investigate politicians like your MPs, but only MPs can lodge complaints in terms of this Executive Members Ethics Act. That's what makes us to operate in a political space, and you should know that we are apolitical, we just operate in that space. Hence, this labeling, again, it's so unfortunate that you find even certain journalists and even analysts who just talk like that without being informed or without also informing the public about what the Constitution is saying, what are the laws of the country vis-a-vis this institution. So, and you find that most of the time complaints are lodged by members of the opposition parties. They are fighting their own political battles, but what we do, we check what happened, what should have happened, what is the Constitution, what is the legal framework saying, purely on all our reports. That's how we report. Others have illustrated me appearing to be struggling to walk on giant high heels. I think you've seen some of those. And why must I lose myself while trying to fit in somebody else's shoe? Which I said it when I joined the institution that I'm bringing my own shoes, and I think that's what, that's what I will do, and I continue doing. So many public and political figures that my office have investigated and found wanting are the ones who are portraying us as people who are questionable. I mean, if we've done 34,000 complaints since I joined the institution and issued around 110 reports, and you only find maybe 2 reports where people are alleging that you are targeting them. So we will have to make sure that we also have very credible and experienced investigators who are the ones who are conducting the investigations. You'll know that I wouldn't dare do all those 34,000. In fact, all of them don't reach my desk because we've got investigators who are delegated to do that work. Even the very same reports, I'm not sitting and writing those reports. Those experienced team members are doing that. But now what is ongoing is to separate this Busisiwe Mkhwebane to the public protector. Unfortunately, we are one because I'm leading this particular team. But again, how the media is reporting and when we give our side of the story, because most of the time the reporting is, you'll be possibly running some, or you'll be editors and whatever, because the issue is the headline, and after that, what you think of me, that's what is happening. And then just 1 line or 2 lines about our response. I think there was an article by Farrell Hafaji. I think that will be the best if you can have that in the media space, where you ask a question, we respond and tell you, and you publish it as it is. That was the best ever I've seen. In fact, I must thank her for doing that. I never thanked her, because that article, for me, it will be giving South Africans an opportunity to read factual reporting. So I've said a mouthful. I think I've passed my 20 minutes. I'll be gladly willing to clarify and answer some questions. Thank you so much for giving me.
Thank you very much.